If this episode spoke to your soul, I invite you to subscribe and stay connected to this sacred space. Each week, I share transmissions to awaken your presence, align with your highest self, and remember the beauty of now. Subscribe to Journey with Me and let your listening become a living ritual. Do you notice when someone goes to a sanctuary or a place of worship, pilgrimage, a temple, or a church, wherever, and when you look at these people and the way they carry themselves, that feeling that they embody, that awe and that wonder and that love, and the way they praise and they rejoice in whatever is being taught at that moment to them or whatever they're seeing at the altar, do you see how that person totally transformed? They're like a new identity, a new person, a new character, a new personality. And at the time they left that pilgrimage or that place of worship, they just gone back to their own meany, not so happy, not so jolly way of being. What is that? What happens when you're in that holy sanctuary? Something seemed to, I don't know, invoke in you. And this podcast, this episode, we're going to talk a lot about self-praise and adoration and why it is the key to manifest the version of yourself that you envision. So I spent my childhoods in both Sunday school on Sundays and Bachuka Satsang on Saturdays. I attended a Catholic high school in Georgetown where I learned to sing in Sanskrit and read the Bible. In temple, I learned about the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana. My entire life has been colored with the rich vibrancy of culture and traditions that surround me. And I've noticed that there's a lot of similarities in these ancient scriptures. And most importantly, these books were written millennia ago, 5,000 years ago. And by the time that was sent down to us in this generation, a lot of communication must have been, misled, so to speak, because what the original intention of these scriptures is to highlight our highest self, our best self, our future self, our greater self, that best version of ourselves that we envision for ourselves. So when we go to the temple or this pilgrimage and we worship these people are actually mirroring that qualities of ourselves that is deeply inherent and embedded, but we haven't really discovered it because no one really ever teach us about it. We were taught to worship somebody else and praise somebody else. And in context, these texts was actually a story, a psychological drama of our mind, our mindset, and who we intend to be, our fullest human potential. And this is where the topic of self-image comes in when we want to change that current aspect of ourselves. How do you see yourself now? Is it something, are you pleased with how you are in whatever state financially, romantically, in terms of your health, your lifestyle? Is there something that you would like to change? Any aspect of your life that you want to change? If not, then great. I am happy for you. Let's rejoice. If there's something that you want to change, then ask yourself, what is the current self-image of yourself? How do you hold yourself? How do you think? How do you feel? How do you act? And what are the inner conversations you have about yourself? And most importantly, the way you think, feel, and act. Does it currently align with that version of yourself in which you aspire to be, who you aspire to become? Ask yourself that. Do you praise that aspect of yourself, who you want to become? Do you celebrate that aspect of yourself, who you want to become? Do you, I don't know, embody that feeling or that energy, that intended version of yourself that you want to be? Do you embody that energy, that feeling? So here's where you can get creative and you can create an archetype. Maybe you, let's talk physically. Maybe you want to change the weight that you have. You're not pleasing your body image. So then ask yourself, your highest self, your best self, how would she eat? What meals would she eat? What kind of food would she buy? What kind of food would she not buy? Things like that. And how was she dressed? How would she speak? How would she hold herself? And when you start to embody that aspect of yourself, you're becoming them in day by day, daily habits and behaviors, in the way you think, you feel, you act. You're becoming that future version of yourself in the now, not in the future. You do these little daily routines and habits in the now, and this behavior, the thoughts, the thinking, the emotions that you evoke in now, it becomes the blueprint of that person who you envision for yourself in the future. And believe me, when you finally become that ideal version of yourself, you won't even realize it, because you would have become so accustomed in her habits, in her thought patterns, her behavioral patterns, the way she speaks about herself, the way she adore herself, the way she praise herself. You won't even imagine that you've actually become that person, because you would have been living the life of that person. And that is the power of self-praise and self-adoration, loving yourself, holding yourself in that high regards, the way that you would when you look at someone and you admire them. Look at yourself in that regards and hold her and admire her, love her, be grateful for her, enjoy, rejoice. As what the ancient books would say, rejoice and celebrate. Do you see, when you look at one of these ancient scriptures, like they're always in these little circles and they're dancing and they're happy and they're rejoicing and singing and humming and eating delicious foods? Like, these were intended, these stories and these ancient scriptures were intended to guide us in our own way of being, adapting that kind of mindset in our everyday habits, in becoming the highest version of ourselves. And each of us has that potential to becoming that person who we envision for ourselves. And it starts with that self-love, that oxytocin, that self-praise and that adoration. And like I talked in a previous episode, that image that we have of ourselves mentally, that self-image, it is translated into complementary chemicals, and these chemicals flood our systems in different hormones, oxytocin, dopamine, and what else, serotonin, and that kind of become the blueprint of and the trajectory of the life that we would lead for ourselves and the person who we become. And there is so much thing that you can do every day, and most importantly, you have to stay in the now. Live in the now. Do not ruminate backwards. Live in the old memory that happened decades ago. When you live backward, you're reliving that memory, and you're strengthening that neural circuitry that is aligned with that memory, whether if it's bad or it's good, and you're not creating new memories. When you are focused in the now, your attention is aligned with the intention of how you feel, how you want to feel, how you want to act, how you want to think in the now. You are creating, strengthening the circuitry to align with that person in the future, your future self, your best self, your high self, in becoming that aspect of what you envision for yourself. And this is why I talked about disciplining your attention towards the emotions, aligning with how you want to feel and who you want to become. But you have to focus in the now, and disciplining that emotion, all of that feel good emotions, love, trust, openness, possibilities. And the more we praise and we adore that part of ourselves, of who we're becoming, we tend to override those negative emotions, the fear, the self-doubt, the self-sabotage, the self-judge, and the self-criticism, because those feelings, they are on the lower scale of your emotional frequency, and we want to stay on the love side, on the trust side, and the joy side, and the blissful side. So when you look back at those ancient scriptures, whichever one you feel you may have in regards to your cultural upbringing, look at those pictures and you would kind of see kind of how they're mirroring that great, best, highest version of yourself. And as you look at it, you start to want to embody that vision that you're looking in that book. And that picture is a symbolic representation of your highest self, your best self, your most beautiful, best version of yourself. So for the rest of the day, just find different little nuggets of how you can adore and praise yourself in the most beautiful, loving way. And this could be like, I don't know, if you look at yourself in the mirror, how do you usually respond when you look at yourself with that in a mirror? Maybe if you tend to respond in a negative manner, now you're conscious of this whole mindset towards your envisioning your highest self, so you tend to kind of gauge that conversation with something more positive. Maybe if you're getting dressed and you tend to want to criticize yourself of how you're looking, now you're conscious of becoming that version of yourself, and in becoming her, she will want to talk to herself in that manner. So you kind of gauge your conversations, the vocabulary that you use to describe yourself. And it starts now. If you do not start now, in the future, there would be no change, because everything you do in the now affects who you become in the future. And like I said, neuroplasticity. If you keep doing it now, it strengthens that circuitry in becoming that and in aligning to that person who you want to become in the future. So until next time. If this space has nourished you, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a review or share this episode with someone who's ready to receive. Your presence here is part of the blessing. Thank you for walking this path with me.